Madam President, how much time is left on our side?
4.5 minutes.
I'd ask unanimous consent that I consume that 4.5 minutes and an additional 1 minute. The generous chairman from the
Without objection. The senator from Oklahoma.
Thank you. I hear the word legacy. The legacy that's going to be left from this bill is demonstrated to us by history. Here's what we did last time we found ourselves in this shape. The federal government as a percentage of GDP went from 2.5% to 20% in all the New Deal programs. There's a wonderful book. People ought to read it. It's called The Forgotten Man, Roosevelt's Forgotten Man series. And this is an analysis of what we did, how we did it, what worked and what didn't. Quite frankly, what you can see from this chart is government never got small again. Never. And what's going to happen is if you look outside of this chart to what we're doing now, you're going to see government again. And so the total state and federal take from GDP will be above 38% from now on. What does that mean to you? What's the legacy of that? The legacy of that is lost opportunity. Not for us. We'll be pushing up daisies. Our children and our grandchildren, though, will suffer from a massive decline in their standard of living. That's not to say we shouldn't do a stimulus bill. The stimulus bill that we should do should be very targeted. This one is not. Should be timely. This one is not. And should be temporary. This one absolutely is not, because we're going to see this same thing happen. Even your own budget chairman, the honorable senator from North Dakota, at a minimum, $124 billion a year increase in the baseline, additional spending that'll never go away. Never go away. So what does it mean when we say we have a legacy? Here's the legacy of this bill. The cost this year, not including interest, for every family in this country is going to be $11,000. That's what we're going to borrow against your future earnings. We're going to increase the baseline in the budget just this year, $350 billion. That's just this year. Increase in the annual deficit somewhere between $50 billion and $185 billion. That's before we talk about interest. We're going to pay $438 billion in interest on this borrowed money over the next 10 years. When everybody knows that if you save before you spend, it costs you about half. What we're doing is spending and costing the future of our children. What's the Congressional Budget Office best guess? Somewhere between 1.3 and 2.9 million new jobs. But also their best guess is by 10 years from now we'll have a negative effect on the economy from this, quote, stimulus effect. We're going to spend $15 billion to renovate offices for federal employees. What percent will really stimulate of this $800+ billion bill? About 12%. The other thing that's wrong with the bill is that there's no brakes on it. What happens when we have 2 or 3 quarters of growth? Do you think this body will come back and take this money away? No, politicians are averse to ever taking anything away because they care more about getting reelected than they care about what is in the best long-term interest of the country. So here we have a stimulus bill that's going to forever raise the baseline and the interference of government. Now, what does this really mean if it goes to 35%? What it means is you lose liberty. You lose freedom. If you think the government is involved in the decisions you make now, just grow it another 10% total and see what happens. Your liberty and your freedom. Doesn't mean we shouldn't do a stimulus bill. We should. But we ought to do one that will really make a difference. The other moral hazard with this bill is we didn't hear today what the plans are for the mortgage problems, the housing problems, or the bank problems. Now, the reason we didn't hear is because we have to get past this vote, because when you get ready to swallow the near $1 trillion they're going to come and ask for on those 2 problems, this is going to seem small. But if you have to talk about both of them at the same time, $1.8 trillion. Now we're at $25,000 per family. The fact is what was done in this country from 29 to 38 didn't work. We're not even doing as good a job as they did in terms of directing the money. And yet, because of the basis of fear, we're going to pass a bill saying we have to do something. We do have to do something. But it doesn't have to be done today. It needs to be done in a very meticulous manner to make sure we get it right. There is a legacy with this bill. I'll spend the last few minutes talking about the fact that there's no earmarks in this bill. That's an out and outright untruth. There are tons of earmarks in this bill, from electric golf carts to power generations for specific lobbyists that spent well over $1 million getting it in there, to a new building for the State Department to train its security personnel. They spend $12 million a year now. They're going to spend $275 million and then still spend $12 million a year. But we get a building in West Virginia because the senators from West Virginia want that building there. The competitiveness clause that we put in this, as the Senate voted unanimously to put all contracts competitive, it'll be blown out of the water. It'll never come out of the conference because
The senator's time has expired.
Because we don't want to do what's best for the children of this country. We want to do what's best for the politicians. I yield the floor.